But let's move into your an example or multiple examples, whatever you want to share from your experiences of things that most would consider a success, or even something that you might have considered one times that you actually did fail or tried and it didn't work out. Give us something from the front lines, from the trenches of your life, and we'll go from there.
Well, let's talk about the failures because those are more fun.
Okay.
Um, you know the, geez, I've got a lot of them. Been involved in two failed startups, and the reasons for each were different, and but I learned something in each one, and one of the most valuable lessons that I took coming out of both of them is a different viewpoint on partnerships. And I used to think that a startup required you to have a partnership, and a startup required you to get two or three founding partners, put a team together, and go chase after an idea. And that's certainly one version of a startup, and I think that a lot of people do that and do that quite successfully. But the success rate of partnerships is about 5%. I think is the most recent data on the success rate of partnerships, about 5%. So they don't typically end well. When they do end, they tend to come between friendships, and I'm still friends with some of my old partners, but in hindsight, I would never have entered into partnerships, and I won't enter into any other partnerships ever again. I think it's one thing to be an investor in companies, and that's probably something that I will be doing at some point. But right now, my goal is not to enter into partnerships, and that's something that I learned from a business standpoint. Is what ends up happening is you get two people or three people or four people who have very different objectives, who have very different ideas, and you can all say you're on the same page, and you try and split things evenly, and you try and work things out, but at some point, somebody's neck is on the line, and somebody's got to be responsible for that decision, and 9 times out of 10, you're not going to agree, and it's going to be a decision that impacts the future of the company. And it just, in all honesty, I don't like partnerships. I don't recommend partnerships. It's one of those things that I learned personally, and I think that if I could do them all over again, I would not have entered into them. And I still to this day strongly encourage people to find ways of getting people involved without taking on partners. Because there are other ways of revenue sharing, profit sharing, and doing a lot of different things in company structure. But the easiest is a partnership, and I think it's a cop-out for a lot of people because they don't want to go through the process of trying to find people who are willing to take a revenue-sharing position and try and do some different things early on. And so the easiest default is to go, oh, well, I'll give them 10% of the company, or, oh, well, they're bringing a lot of things to the table, so I'm going to give them half of my company. And I just don't think that that's the right idea. I think I think oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes it's a cop-out, and it's just fear of, there's that fear again. It's fear of not wanting to have the tough conversations. It's a fear of thinking that you're not able to sell the idea or build it without somebody else. It's basically saying that, well, I'm limited and I'm not strong enough and I'm not good enough or I'm not this enough to build this on my own or to assemble a team separate of me just having to give away the store to make it happen. And I just don't think that that's true. I think that most people are capable. Not that you're capable of doing everything on your own. You need a team, but how you structure that team can be very different than just giving somebody half of your company. So those are two failures, both of those companies, which, again, I mean, mistakes, failures, whatever you want to call them, where if I could do them over again, I wouldn't have done them, but I learned a tremendous amount coming out of them, and I'm not disappointed in my efforts. I'm not disappointed in anything about it. It was a try and it was a miss, and I moved on from it and I learned from it, and I've carried forward what I've learned into what I do now.
Yeah. Let me. I have two questions, but I want to kind of go back to what you were talking about just for clarification. When you say you're not, when you're saying don't do you're not for partnerships. That's not necessarily saying that you're against the team building aspect. I guess I just wanted to make that clarification that you're saying there's a difference between building up a team that can accomplish what you're setting out to do and actually bringing on partners on the ownership side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody needs a team in different capacities, depending on where you are in your business and the type of business that you're trying to start. Everybody needs a team because you're not capable of doing everything on your own. By the way, I just lost your video. Is this still rolling?
I think that it went out for a second. I just fixed it.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
All right. So, I think everybody needs a team. But yeah, it's the partnership in the legal sense of, company ownership and who owns the company. And in my opinion, I just don't think most companies need to be built under that partnership model. Do some? Yeah, there probably are some that I think you can make the case for. But do I think that the majority of them do? No. I think it's a cop-out, truthfully.
Yeah, that's good perspective. I'm sure not everybody would agree with you.
No, and I'll probably get reamed for that one. But I've gotten reamed for that before, but I don't really care.
No, that's great. I'm glad that you don't, because it's good that everybody has their own opinion and they're able to believe in their own things.
And truthfully, I mean, look at the stats. Okay, so it's my opinion that I don't like them, but look at the stats on their success rate, and the success rate of them sucks. So, whether you agree with me or not, you can't point to statistics to back up that argument that partnerships are good. Mm-hmm. Teamwork is good. Teams are good. Everybody needs a team. Look, surround yourself with people smarter and better than you. That's my philosophy. But, that doesn't mean that I have to give away the store to get them. And I'm perfectly willing to share in revenue and do a lot of different things. And joint ventures, partnering on a particular project and doing these kind of short-term things where, hey, let's come together, partner on this project, split the revenues, but then after that project is done, it's disbanded. I think there's a lot of different things that are opportunities there that don't necessarily have to tie you into something for, the next 60 to 100 years of your life.
Yeah. If the other question I had, I just wanted to clarify that thing before we moved on, but if you can think back to in the moments after, when you kind of are realizing during those startups that, this is going to work, or this is falling apart, or whatever the situation was, if you can think back to your actual mindset at that time, what were you going through? What was in your head? Had you already reached the realization of, oh, this is fine, or were you just like this, were you freaking out? Where were you at?
It was different with each company, but you get to a point where you realize that any additional... The question I always ask myself is, knowing what I know now and where I'm at today, would I restart this project today? If I had the chance to start it all over, would I restart this project? And if the answer is no, why am I going to invest more of my time and more of my money into that project, into that company or whatever it is? And that's the signal to me where if I can't honestly answer yes, it's time to figure out how to end that project, to end that company, to end that direction. And to just say, you know what, I'm going to have to learn a lot of lessons on the flip side of this, but first things first, let's unwind this. Is it frustrating? Yeah, it sucks. It's frustrating. It's defeating at times. You fight those feelings of feeling like a failure, and realizing that this is just one bump in the process or one bump in the road, and to get to that point where you can say, okay, let's unwind this, let's get out of this, or let's stop this project, or let's kill this direction, and then regroup on the backside. I try not to make decisions on an emotional basis. I'm not going to. Generally, when I unwound a company, the thinking would be, okay, take a month or two and just process what happened. Look at what happened. Why did it happen? What went wrong? What could I have done differently? Not blaming anybody else. And because and I think personal responsibility, I tweeted this yesterday, is one of the most underrated character traits. It's not looking at what everybody else did wrong. It's not looking at circumstances and blaming something else. It's basically saying, I'm going to take responsibility for what I did do or what I didn't do, and I'm going to learn from that moving forward. Because if I can't learn from it, if I can't move forward from that, then, my dad used to tell me, you take you with you wherever you go. So the problem is, if I didn't learn from these mistakes, I would go into my next business or into my next company carrying that same mindset that got me into the problem in the first place. And so it's basically about fixing myself and taking a new with me to wherever I was going next. And so the fear, the frustration, the pain, the defeat, all of that's going to be there at times of mistakes or failure or whatever it is that you want to call it. You have to acknowledge that. You have to understand that it's going to be there. And then you have to figure out, okay, how do I not let that cripple me from acting in the future? And that's where I think most people end up truthfully failing and becoming failures, is when that fear or that mistake cripples them from acting again and trying again. And they just go, well, I failed. It's not going to work. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not going to try again. I'm not going to risk again. And then they just play it safe for the rest of their life. I've met too many people that do that, and it's tough sometimes. It's tempting. And